So we have the opening, after the brief introduction, we have the opening melody with the flutes. Can we try that? Just play from A, it will be oboe, flute 1, and solo clarinet. I'll count you off. 1, 2, 3. Good. Excellent job. See, they're already doing stuff different that isn't written in the music than when I heard them the last time. One of the issues I was having, and I mentioned this to them before, was in writing a march. A lot of it is about rhythm with marches. And there's a lot of dotted 8/16 rhythms that I didn't want turned into triplets, which is often the case with not only young players, but also even professionals have to be careful not to turn dotted 8/16 into a triplet rhythm. So what I did was, in some cases where I really wanted some snap, I wrote a double dotted eighth followed by a 32nd. And they're doing that great. But what they're also doing, which isn't really written in the music, is harmonically they're now listening to where the melody is sort of pushing against the overall sonority of the chords underneath them. And I can hear them sort of stretching the music whenever they do that. Can you play that again? I'll count off for you. And I haven't told them, I'm sure you've worked on it with Maestro Jenkins, but it's amazing that you're doing it, and it's good that you're doing it, even though I didn't necessarily write it in the music. I'll count you off. 1, 2, 3. So bringing out these things in the music, the tension, as it were, melodically, is something that is important because music's all about the tension and the release. And if they can't hear it, they're not going to be able to play it. And then certainly the audience won't be able to hear it at all. So it's important that as educators, and especially as people who want to perform contemporary music, is that we become aware of the tension and the release, make them aware of it if maybe they aren't used to hearing the music or just simply don't hear it. Try to make them aware of it so that they can make the audience aware of it. A lot of times, to many people, contemporary music just sounds all dissonant. It's all tension. And at a certain point, the listener will shut off and just get numb to it. If I were to play parts of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, or most of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, to my grandmother, it would just sound like gibberish, and it'll be all tension and no release. So it really is up to the band director and the performers, or orchestra director and the performers, to really bring out the differences in tension and release in contemporary music that people may not be accustomed to listening to. They may not be familiar with the language as much. So it's not all dissonant, despite, at least the good stuff isn't all dissonant, despite the way we may first hear it. It takes getting used to it a bit and maybe studying other music that's similar to it. So excellent job on bringing that out. Now, this piece is marked at circa quarter note equals 116. So about quarter note equals 116. I understand that with different groups, and of course in different spaces, you may have to adjust the tempo. That's why I always put about a certain tempo and leave it up to the conductor and the musicians to figure out what works for the group. They're taking it a bit faster, and they have the chops to do it. And so I'm gonna ask the lower instruments to display a bit of that in the second theme, which occurs at C. Now here's where it gets a bit notier, especially for lower instruments, which again, I'm a tuba player, and I know that we rarely get anything faster than an eighth note. But when we do, it's kind of exciting and kind of scary at the same time. And I know for a band director, it can be very scary because their players aren't used to playing quote-unquote fast notes. They're used to playing the umpa all the time. And so it can be a challenge to get the lower instruments to sound clean when they're doing that. But you'll have a much stronger low brass and low woodwind group if you do take on that challenge and sort of up the game and up the level from the bottom of your ensemble. It makes everyone else play better. So, having said all that and gave you guys a great introduction, let's try at rehearsal C. I'll count you off, okay? This is first time through, so the high instruments can lay out. Oh, 1, 2, 3. Tuba players, you can relax. Let's just leave it to the people who have the melody there. Okay? 1, 2, 3, and. Excellent. Really great bari sax playing, by the way. You're quite welcome. I mean, everyone sounded good, but yeah, don't give him a big head. Never look encouragingly at the low brass, I think is the quote. That's great. So the question now is, do the rest of you feel balanced with the lower saxophones? Do you? No? No? So what do? Do you play louder, or do you look at the sax player scoldingly and wag your finger and say they should play softer? Do you just say whatever, if the conductor doesn't say anything, then who cares? This is important because I do a lot of conducting, and I like to instill my ensemble and all the players in the ensemble with a certain sense of responsibility in sort of managing themselves to a certain extent. And of course, a conductor is in the best place to hear things, and you can't hear things as well when you're in the ensemble. But what I found very helpful is to not only let the principal players know that it's their responsibility to breathe and bring in the ensemble, even though I may give a cue or something goes wrong, I may be looking, so it's their responsibility to bring in their group, and the players who are playing second and third, it's their responsibility to be right with the first player, not only in breathing, but in dynamics as well. And by doing that, not only will they play more together, even if they're coming in wrong, at least they're coming in wrong as a section, but it gives them a sense of contributing to the piece and a sense of ownership. And it almost always makes the experience not only more fun, but more efficient, because they can decide things on their own and present them to me as a conductor, rather than me having to micromanage everything. And this can work even with young players, just getting them to communicate with each other on that level really inspires them to take a hold of the piece as their own, as opposed to working on something that's the conductor's and they just have to play. So whenever you have the melody, one good rule of thumb is to always play up to the lead player. If the lead player plays softer, then you play a little bit softer. Or if the lead player plays louder, you play up to that. So the question is, who's going to be the lead player? Who wants to be the lead player? Let's see. Okay, that's all right. Why don't we make you the lead player? You are now the president of the low reeds, and you are going to set the bar that they're going to play at. Okay? Let's try that. I'll count you off. 1, 2, 3, and. playing up a bit stronger now. What I often do is, when I have the time, and I understand that middle school bands and even high school bands are very limited on time, but what I often do is assign different people to lead different sections just as an exercise, and then switch back. So maybe the third trumpet is going to lead the section here, just so that they understand what it takes to lead, so that they become better followers. But I'm going to ask you, what are you going to do to inspire them? What are you going to do as a leader to inspire them?
Well, for the people that can see me, be able to give cues.
Okay, so for the people that can see him, he's going to give more physical cues so that they can follow that way.
And for people who can't, I'll just play more definitively so they know where we are.
Okay, so the people who can't see him back there, he's going to play more definitively so that they can all hear where he is. Now, what do you mean by definitively?
Mainly louder, but with better accents, I guess, to show them the example.
Okay, mainly louder, but with better accents. Now, the reason you're putting in the accents is, like, where are you going to decide to put in accents?
It's mostly the articulation, but any articulations. So.
Okay. What students need to understand is the best leadership comes from inspiring people emotionally. So all those things you said are absolutely correct. You need to do those things. But when you approach leadership and when you approach playing something so that people not only can hear you and follow you, but they actually want to follow you, it's a matter of playing with such emotional definitiveness that they can hear that's what's supposed to happen. So when you play this melody, you got to be extravagant, be the thespian on stage with how you're shaping it and how you're expressing it, how you're making it sound happy, or if it's a sad piece, how you're making it sound sad. That's what's going to determine where you put all those accents. That's what's going to make it definitive, the musical and emotional content. And that's what's going to make it more fun to play. Because once you start doing that, not only will they listen more closely, and you can actually play softer and they'll actually follow that, but more importantly, with a piece of contemporary music, it makes it more interesting. Playing contemporary music, technically perfect, is actually more boring than playing it with a bunch of mistakes. Because again, with contemporary music, a lot of it sounds foreign to the average listener, especially the average parent that may come into a band concert. So it's really important to, again, bring out the emotion in the music. And when you assign these leadership roles within the section, it's important that they understand that their primary goal is to lead the section emotionally, of course, within the scope of the conductor's interpretation. And then all the technical things follow from that. So if you have an emotional idea of what section C is supposed to sound like, then you'll put accents in certain places and you'll breathe a certain way to bring everyone in with that attitude. And all the technique flows from that. Now, we have a trio, like every march, you add a flat and you have a trio. So that this march is fairly traditional in that respect. And that starts at D. So can I hear the people that are playing the melody there, which are the solo clarinet and the horn and the glockenspiel, I think. Yes, glockenspiel. So I'll give you a measure of 3, and then you can come in on beat 2 of the next measure. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 1. So here we have not as rhythmic a melody. That's what happens in most trios. The music sort of broadens out and becomes more lyrical. What I often do when I'm conducting, and I'm sure many of you do, is stop conducting. And that, again, forces players to listen if they want to match up not only with the character of the music, but also the technical things to bring that character out, and note releases and stuff like that. So, we have 3 people playing. Who was playing the softest? Can anyone tell me? The glockenspiel. Now, which instrument will tend to sound the lightest between a French horn, a clarinet, and a glockenspiel? So, if we want to make this sound light and wispy and very lyrical, which instrument should lead? You guys are brilliant. Okay, so that means that you're president for at least a few measures. It sounds great, and I don't want the horn or clarinet to feel that they don't have to work as much, because they still need to contribute to the musical environment here. But now we have a better understanding of who should lead and why they should lead, because we're getting very light and it's a wispy character, a contrast from the relative heaviness of our trombone, bassoons, and bari sax. So with that understanding, let's try it one more time. I'll give you a count of 3, breathe on 1, and come in on 2. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now some of you, is she leading? Is it being led by the glockenspiel, or is it being led by the horn and clarinet? What do you think? Horn and clarinet still.